Okay, so it's since I put my review up of The Batman, I've had a number of people saying that my review is basically the antithesis to Ben Shapiro's now, let's say, infamous take on The Batman. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be reacting to his review of it. Now, I just want to say this. While I don't approve of his political views, I'm going to leave them at the door for the sake of this video. So, no, I won't be going into anything political, even though he is a political commentator. So, we're just going to talk about his Batman take. So, let's watch.
So, last night I went and saw The Batman. Went and saw it with my wife. It is 1 million hours long. And it's one of those movies where I started off and I was like, okay. And then I got a little further in, I was like, all right. And then I got to the end, I was like, meh. And then the more I thought about it, the angrier I became.
Very intense. 1 million hours long. I don't understand the controversy behind the runtime, for starters. It is not a 3-hour-long movie. It's 3 hours if you include the credits, but if you don't, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, and that's just 20 minutes longer than your average blockbuster, your average MCU fare. So, again, it's really nothing to write home about in terms of the runtime, but go off.
And so you're about to hear a lot of hot takes on The Batman, because I hate this movie. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to tell you right up front, spoilers. Spoilers aplenty here. So if you haven't seen the film yet, and you want to see the film, and you don't want to be spoiled, I'm warning you. You've been warned.
I wish I hadn't seen the film yet, then I'd have a good excuse not to watch this review.
All right, this is Detective Batman. So if the original Michael Keaton Batman was sort of crime-fighting Batman, and the Christopher Nolan Batman was city-saving Batman, this Batman is supposed to be Detective Batman. And this has a long history in the Batman comics. Some of the best Batman comics, particularly my favorite, The Long Halloween, is rooted in the idea of Batman not just as Caped Crusader, but as a great detective.
So I'm intrigued then. What's not to like about it in that case?
Smarter than everybody else, capable of picking up on clues, investigating and tracking down crimes.
Okay, all right.
I'm going to start with what's right with the film, because it's going to be real short. So what's right with the film is that it looks great. It is a film noirish take on Gotham City. It almost feels kind of like retro Taxi Driver Gotham City. So everything's very dirty. It's all taking place at night. It's shot in kind of grayscale at times. It's got a lot of warm oranges and reds.
Definitely not shot in grayscale at any point, but okay.
But against a very dark black. So it's a lot of muttered dialogue. It feels as though it's taking place in the same city as Joker is taking place. So if you saw Joker, Todd Phillips' Joker, which looks like 1970s New York, it feels almost like the other half of that, but it seems more like the take on what future New York would look like if you were living in New York in 1970. That's sort of a good way of putting it. The music to the film is okay. I think that Michael Giacchino tends to be a little bit derivative in how...
Okay. Music, very, very subjective, so I'm not really going to comment on that, but I thought the music was fantastic, so I disagree with that one.
He does the scores to the films. This one, he basically takes the music that Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard wrote for Batman Begins in the Nolan trilogy, which the theme goes da-da, and here he just inverts it. So instead of da-da, it's da-da. Okay, fine.
They are nothing alike. I mean, there's more to those themes than those two notes, and admittedly, Michael Giacchino's theme is a bit more simpler. It kind of depends much more on those two notes, but like, I definitely wouldn't say there's any similarity between the themes, in spite of what you're kind of saying there. I kind of get it, but just, I think that's a very reachy kind of claim.
So it's a little bit derivative, but the score is totally fine. The acting is okay, as we'll find out in a second. They give Robert Pattinson nothing to do as Batman. Nothing to do as Batman. I didn't think that Zoë Kravitz had any sort of chemistry with Robert Pattinson, so she's fine.
I'm really intrigued to know what he means when he says they didn't give Robert Pattinson anything to do as Batman. And yeah, okay, I'll say this. Zoë Kravitz and Robert Pattinson did not have much chemistry between the two of them. It was a very awkward thing. That was deliberate, but okay.
Fine, she's kind of flirty. I didn't see anything particularly wrong with her performance. I just didn't see a lot right with her performance. You have John Turturro showing up as Carmine Falcone, and he is John Turturro, so he's okay. He's somewhat menacing. The best performance in the film is Colin Farrell playing the Penguin. You literally cannot spot Colin Farrell in this makeup. There is no way that you can see Colin Farrell here. The whole movie, I'm staring at him going, that's not Colin. It is Colin Farrell. It's the best performance in the movie. Paul Dano gives a good performance in the film, although he's sort of playing the Joker a little bit, although he's playing it more wide-eyed, as Paul Dano is apt to do.
Not really. No, I definitely wouldn't say he's playing the Joker. He has much more of a case to make than the Joker. Anyways, let's just
The main
continue.
character of the film is the Riddler, and herein lies the main problem with the film.
Okay.
The biggest problem with the film is that the film hates Batman.
What the fuck? Okay, I'm supposed to be thinking that, by the way. Like, I'm basically playing into exactly what he wanted me to think. In that, he says that hot take, and then he goes straight to a screen to pause it, and it's like, oh, well, what's this? So, yeah, we're seeing kind of the showman in Ben Sharpie here. Let's continue.
Like, the actual Batman character hates the Batman character, and this drives me up an absolute wall.
All right,
The biggest problem with
let's
the
hear
film
it.
is not the wokeness. Yes, there's some woke touches. You have Catwoman, who is a woman of color, who is, of course, good, and you have the black female mayor, who is good, and you have the black Jim Gordon, who is good.
These are just comments about optics, really. The color of their skin really doesn't factor into it, but of course, Ben Shapiro being Ben Shapiro would find it to be woke to have black characters that are not bad people. Because that's basically what I'm taking from this.
Every white character is apparently bad, like all of them.
Okay, what about Bruce Wayne and Alfred?
Fine, whatever. I don't really care about that. That's fine.
You cared about it enough to make a comment on it.
You have Catwoman say stuff about white privileged elites and
I knew it! That was it. That's the bit that ruined the movie for him. I knew it. I knew it as soon as he said that the Batman is bad. I knew that this would be a trigger point for him.
she makes a suggestion that Bruce Wayne is a child when his parents were killed. He does.
I mean, like, don't take it so personally, man. Like, I'm not taking it personally. I'm a white guy, I'm not taking it personally. She's referring to the wealthy white male elite. That's a thing. You can stick your head in the sand. Anyways, just, again, not going to get political.
Doesn't really have a right to be super upset about that because, of course, he was very, very rich. That doesn't, kind of rings hollow.
Wait, when does Catwoman imply that? Fucking the Riddler kind of does, but Catwoman doesn't. What are you talking about?
A lot of these lines seem like throwaways for film lefty Twitter, but the main theme is not a throwaway. The main theme is what matters here.
Maybe there's a possibility that the people making these films hold their own political views that might differ from yours, hence why they might make points like this. So much for the tolerant right.
The film despises Batman. So every Batman iteration has to explain why a man who is a billionaire would dress up like a bat and go around beating up criminals. It's not answered, and the director doesn't know.
I mean, it is. There's a lot of crime in Gotham City. It's a crime-ridden, festering hellhole. So, yeah, like, why wouldn't he?
And the writer doesn't know.
They do.
This is the problem.
The
So
film
the Nolan
absolutely
films,
knows.
to take the contrast. The question as to why Batman does this is because if Batman does not actually intimidate the criminal underworld because the city is so corrupt, no one else will do it, and money isn't going to solve the problem. And so he needs to create a theatrical kind of fear in order to dissuade the criminal underworld from participating. And then, as it turns out, he also has to save the city itself.
That's kind of a known thing about Batman in general, though, and that is what you're referring to here is Batman Begins an origin story. Like, they establish it there. The Batman is not an origin story, but I think it's pretty well established from the get-go. Gotham City is a fucking shithole, and it's too much for just the police to deal with. Not to mention, it's full of police corruption in this one as well. So we kind of need a Batman who's a bit more impartial, but of course you are Ben Shapiro, you wouldn't recognize police corruption.
And demonstrate his faith in the city by becoming a symbol. Here, you don't really know why Batman is doing what he's doing.
It's obvious.
It's never explained.
It's
He's
obvious.
very wealthy. He doesn't apparently do anything with his wealth. He doesn't try to give charity. He doesn't try, I mean, this actually made a plot point. He's a bad man because he's white. He's a bad white man who doesn't.
I mean, he doesn't do charity that we know of, okay? And I'll say that much. But the guy's still investing a lot of money into his endeavor as Batman to make Gotham City a safer place. So you can't exactly go claiming that he's not, at least to some extent, a virtuous man.
Who doesn't actually give charity.
Also, it's kind of an arc anyway. You know, Batman changes over the course of the film. He becomes much more humanitarian by the end of it.
He's not involved, and he's not playing that as a role. Again, this is part of the problem, is that Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same character. So if you... I keep using the Nolan comparison because it is the gold standard for all superhero movies, not just Batman movies. So when you look at...
They're not there yet. He's depressed and reclusive. That's kind of a part of his character here.
Nolan's Batman, Bruce Wayne is the character that Batman is playing. Okay, Bruce Wayne is not real. Batman is real. Batman is who Bruce Wayne really is. And so he has to play a fop. In Batman Begins, he's squiring around ladies in his Lamborghini, and he's buying hotels, and he's doing all of this just to cover up for the fact that he is Batman. So you get very separate Batman and Bruce Wayne. You get the same thing actually with Michael Keaton. Batman and Bruce Wayne are two different characters. Here, Batman and Bruce Wayne are the exact same character.
Okay, yeah, so I pointed this out in my review. Bruce Wayne is not really in this movie. He has not established that persona yet. He's in the Bat persona. I think what we're going to see in future movies is kind of the origin story of the Bruce Wayne persona. I mean, I don't know. If we don't see it by the second movie, I might start to think something's a little amiss. But like right now, that's not the focus of this film, and it's completely okay.
There are points where Bruce Wayne is walking around. He's got the same dour expression, same glazed look, same kind of emo thing going on.
That's, again, because he hasn't developed that Bruce Wayne persona yet.
As Batman does the entire movie. And so there's no dichotomy. Alrighty, folks, well, I may not have loved the Batman, but here's the thing. Real Batman knows how to protect himself and protect his family.
This is going to be a sponsored message, isn't it?
Because you need Ring Alarm.
Yeah,
no.
Skip.
So here's the actual plot of the film.
Okay.
Batman has only been Batman for a couple of years, so he's not really good at Batmaning yet. And he is tracking down criminals, and he gets drawn into a plot by the Riddler. The Riddler is giving clues so that Batman can track down all the way through the system of Gotham, this citywide corruption that apparently is going to bring down the entire superstructure of faith in the city. Meanwhile, you have Catwoman, who's Selena Kyle, played by Zoë Kravitz. And Zoë Kravitz is similarly engaged in an attempt to commit a robbery against one of these underworld figures, but she's drawn into Batman's orbit by a murder that both of them are investigating at the same time, the murder of her roommate, maybe something more going on there. The Riddler is the main villain of the movie. You see the Penguin a fair bit. Carmine Falcone is one of the big characters in the movie. You get a little bit of Alfred. Of course, you get Jim Gordon, whose main job in this film is apparently just to say Jesus over and over again.
Christ, it's Coulson.
Whenever something bad...
Do you have any more examples than that? If you're going to make that kind of point.
That happens, he just goes, Jesus. And that happens like 6 times. Like, Jim Gordon does nothing except for basically stop Batman from getting arrested a lot. That's pretty much all he does. He's a bad detective. He doesn't do anything. The plot is that...
I mean, he kind of helps Batman along, you know? He kind of... Again, he's a guiding force for Batman. He's a guiding force to navigate him through the system of Gotham City, but go off.
All these people get killed. Batman uncovers it. He realizes that his dad was corrupt also, or that his dad engaged in corruption with Carmine Falcone. Finally, we get to the end. Paul Dano does the... It's such a ripoff of Seven. He gives himself up. He doesn't get captured by Batman. Batman does not prevent a single one of these deaths.
I haven't seen Seven, so I can't really comment.
Batman, in fact, is complicit in one of the deaths by accident. And he doesn't actually capture the...
I mean, he can't interfere with the deaths. That's the whole thing, is he's trying to track the Riddler. He doesn't even know where he is, who he is, or where he's going to strike next, and that's what he's kind of working out. You know? Like, you can't expect him to just magically appear and save people's lives and such. And it's made okay by the fact that these are generally corrupt politicians. I mean, it's not made okay, but it's made more stomachable, you know? If these were innocent people, you would think, oh god, Batman really needs to... We need a different hero to Batman, but this is much more of a political thing.
The Riddler because he's clever.
And that's not, again, to say that, you know, I condone the deaths of any political figures. It's just, you know, the Riddler isn't someone that's going out and killing innocent people as such.
The Riddler gives himself up by sitting at a diner and getting arrested. Then he unleashes a bombing of Gotham that essentially causes the flooding of the city. And Batman goes to the Madison Square Garden, where a mayoral event is now being held for the brand new mayor, who is an uplifting black female who has no other story or backstory, so she's really uninteresting. It starts to flood.
Should have seen that coming, huh?
And up on top, in the wings, are a bunch of Paul Dano's followers, are a bunch of the Riddler's followers who are all dressed like the Riddler, and they are shooting down into the crowd to try and kill members of the elite in Gotham City. And so Batman goes up there and he's beating people up. There comes a point where he's beating this guy.
Great scene, by the way. Love this
maybe
scene.
Beating him almost to death.
Just
and
watching it here, it's just great.
And they take off that guy's mask. And they say, who are you? And the guy says, I am vengeance. Okay, now this is the theme throughout the film. Ooh, the theme. Okay, so in order to explain why this is a problem, you have to now understand the character of the Riddler. So it says right at the beginning of the movie, who is Batman? I'm vengeance, right? He's just on the streets and he's beating people up.
I'm vengeance.
And then people keep calling him Mr. Vengeance for no apparent reason. Like, we don't know why they're calling him that. Because he never actually publicly says he's vengeance. It's in his creepy diary.
I mean, he's probably said it outside of that. I mean, I suppose that's a fair point. We don't actually see him say it to many other people, but it's kind of the... I guess he's got a point there.
Which, again, is supposed to be a mirror image of the fact that the Riddler also keeps a Zodiac Killer-style diary. So they're supposed to be two halves of the same whole. Batman is beating up this follower of the Riddler's. He takes off his mask, and the guy says, "I'm vengeance." And suddenly Batman sees. Suddenly Batman realizes he can't be vengeance. That's not what he's meant to do. He's betrayed his mission. And so he then descends on an electrified cable because he's trying to stop people from being electrocuted by this flying electrical wire. And he cuts off the cable. He's holding on to it. He falls down into the water. A rebaptism. He gets up. And then he proceeds to lead a bunch of people who are not really trapped, but kind of trapped, I suppose. And he leads them to, I guess, a safer place.
It's an incredible scene, yeah.
By carrying a torch. And then he goes up to the top of Madison Square Garden, and he is helping people be airlifted and evac'd out, medevac'd out.
An awesome moment. Like, this was, in my opinion, one of the best Batman moments. So let's hear what he has to say about this.
And this is how he has learned fulfillment. So what is this movie about? This movie is about how fighting criminality does not actually help innocent people. He says this at the very beginning. He says, "I'm not sure I'm doing any good. I'm not sure I'm doing any good."
A person questioning themselves does not mean that they're not actually helping in an objective level. Like, Batman is helping whether or not he's actually going to necessarily understand or appreciate that himself. Like, when Batman goes in and fights those thugs on the subway, he still helped their victim. He still helped that guy. It helped on an objective level. It doesn't deep-root all crime ever. There's no quick and fast way for Batman to fix Gotham, but he is still helping, whether or not Bruce sees it that way or not. He might not be fulfilling his overall mission, but he is still helping. So that is a total fallacy.
By fighting the criminals, crime is still up. It turns out that Batman has to stop being Batman. Batman has been missing it the whole time. What Batman really has to be is Superman.
What?
Batman needs to go into areas like Madison Square Garden and not fight the criminals. He needs to go and lead people with a torch to a slightly safer area. He needs to help medevac people on the top of the... He needs to build habitat for humanity.
That doesn't mean that he's not still going to fight crime, though.
He needs to join Jimmy Carter and build houses for homeless people. That's what Batman needs to be doing. This really is a sort of attack on the idea that fighting crime helps innocent people.
What the fuck are you talking about? How in what world does rescuing innocent people contradict fighting crime? In what world can those two things not coexist?
And almost defund the police attitude toward what crime is.
Here we go. You're taking it personally on a political level.
And it's an attack on the basic idea that individuals are capable of doing justice by finding bad guys and fighting them.
You are so fucking touchy, dude. Why are you so touchy?
Instead, apparently, individuals are only capable of doing nice things by helping little old ladies cross the street. It's this sort of mentality that has led to New York turning into Gotham City in the last couple of years, by the way.
What the fuck are you talking about? What the actual fuck are you talking? This is the ramblings of a mental patient right here.
That's a fundamental betrayal of what Batman is.
Oh my god. Okay, so Ben Shapiro doesn't get Batman, for starters. The idea... So as far as Ben Shapiro here is concerned, Batman's a guy that beats up criminals and stuff until all the criminals are gone. And that's his mission, and that's what happens. He cannot help people. He cannot rescue people. He cannot save people, because that's not fighting crime. For as long as he's helping ordinary people, he's not fighting crime. Just admit you don't get Batman. Batman isn't an edgelord to his absolute very core. He's someone who's kind, someone who will work alongside Gotham. Earlier on, you were saying, oh, they lack that humanitarian side to Batman. He's a bad person because he doesn't do any charity work. Now you're criticizing the idea of Batman making like homes for the homeless, and that's not even something that happens in the fucking film. And then you're trying to relate that to real world politics. I can't comment on the state of New York, but none of this adds up. There is no correlation between any of this.
What makes Batman different from the Riddler and than any of these other criminals is these criminals target innocent people and Batman targets criminals. That's the basis of the character.
The Riddler was targeting criminals in this film. It's just that the Riddler's methodology was completely amoral. Like, that... How do you not get this?
The entire basis of the character is the cops are bad at targeting criminals because they're corrupt. Batman is good at targeting criminals because he's smart and because he's rich and because he's incorruptible. That's the entire basis of Batman.
Right.
And they take all that and they flip it on its head because they don't like Batman.
What the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, how? What?
And this is why I have real problems with the movie. I kind of hate the movie. Like, the more I think about it, the more I get angry at it.
Honestly, knowing Ben Shapiro and his views, it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't get Batman. And the fact that we've got a really great Batman here, the fact he doesn't like it, it doesn't surprise me.
Because they take the fundamental idea of what Batman is supposed to be.
What, a guy who, yes, has a lot of demons within himself, but is out to help Gotham, is out to help people, and... I mean, like, let's not forget, why does he fight crime? It's to help the innocent. Like, it always boils down to helping the innocent. Batman helps the innocent. That's the fundamental.
The protector of the innocent who targets the criminal.
Yes.
And they say that if he targets the criminal, this makes him no different than criminals.
What the fuck are you... What are you talking about? What are you talking about? At no point is it ever stated that what he did in capturing the Riddler was wrong. It was more of an attitude thing.
Because Paul Dano, who's the Riddler, is also targeting criminals. All the way up until the very end.
But it's his methodology which makes him the villain. Batman is someone who still ultimately has a little level of compassion to him. The Riddler is not. How do you not get this?
When they have to just sort of add on this attack on Madison Square Garden and New York Broad Writ for no reason. He has no motivation for blowing up a bunch of trucks and flooding downtown. Like, none. He doesn't explain why he does it. He doesn't explain what the purpose of it is. All the way along, he's been saying, I'm exposing the true face of Gotham. Okay.
The idea is that he wipes it clean. He's trying to deep root everything.
That's a rationale. But what does that have to do with blowing up the city? They add that on just...
Honestly, is he capable of nuanced thought? How has he gotten to where he is today? I really don't understand.
Just so that they can create a false distinction between Batman and the Riddler so that Batman can change his mission. So now Batman's mission is not beating up bad guys and stopping bad guys. Now Batman's mission is to be a firefighter.
Batman's whole thing is that he's broadening his horizons, broadening his mind, expanding his mind. Hence why earlier on they kind of note that Batman's lacking in philanthropy. His arc is that he goes from being this predator laser focused on taking down the criminality in Gotham through to he's discovering more ways to help Gotham. You know, he's less laser focused on vengeance and like he still fights crime, but he's also going to help people out. These are things that you yourself criticize, saying that, oh, he doesn't help enough people, he doesn't save enough people. So when he fucking starts doing it, then you complain and say, oh, that's not Batman, and they're saying that fighting crime is wrong. No, it's the difference between a guy that just beats up bad guys for the sake of vengeance and a guy that actively wants to help the innocent.
He's no longer a detective or a police officer, he's a firefighter.
He's ridiculous.
That's a betrayal. And it's a real problem.
No,
that's my biggest issue.
You don't get Batman. You don't. I'm sorry. I don't want to be a gatekeeper, but you do not get Batman on a fundamental level, and you're just mad that this film does.
It just feels like such a sellout. It feels like such a sellout of what Batman is supposed to be. Again, it's got a little bit of woke politics, but that's really not the problem.
You have no fucking clue what you're talking about.
The problem is the broader woke orientation of the film.
Here we go.
If the Nolan Batman was about the idea that you help innocent people by fighting criminality and provide an inspiration to people to fight criminality, if that's the idea of Batman, which it is, that's completely thrown on its head here.
How is it thrown on its head? How is it he inspires people by the end of it? How are you not getting this?
Matt Reeves, who's credited as both a director and a writer on the film, he does not like Batman, and I can't...
You don't fucking like Batman from the sound of it.
Can't get over this. How do you give $150 million to a dude to make a movie about Batman when he clearly does not like Batman? When he thinks that Batman is bad? And that Batman has to be shown the error of his ways.
For starters, if you want me to take you seriously as any kind of a critic, you shouldn't make assumptions about the people making a film. Like, by all means, say I feel the film doesn't really understand or capture what I like about Batman. By all means, say that. But I think when critics start making these comments about, oh, the film hates Batman, or the guy that made it hates Batman, just shut the fuck up, dude. You got no fucking clue.
And learn to be a nicer human being. By the way, at the very end of the movie, Catwoman, who at no point has actually demonstrated any sort of moral bona fides. Like, I'm not sure she does a moral thing in the entire movie. At the very end, she says to him, why don't you run away with me? And we'll go rob some hedge fund CEOs.
I mean, there's quite a difference in Batman and Catwoman, and that's always been kind of the entire point. She's ultimately trying to help Batman take down the Riddler, though, but she's got her own motivations as well. God forbid she have her own interests.
And he doesn't say back to her, you know, that's bad to rob hedge fund CEOs. Instead, he thinks about it for a moment. She's like, no, you belong in Gotham. The generalized cheap left-wing sensibility is very silly with regard to Catwoman. If I have not made clear at this point, the movie's also 8 hours long. It's like a Wagnerian ring cycle, this film. It
We've been over this. It's no longer than your average movie.
just goes on and on and on. Every shot is composed in order to have people walk across rooms. Like Christopher Nolan would snap that cut right to the action. If you watch Dark Knight, there is no wasted motion in that film, and it's 2.5 hours long. This is 3 hours long, and it feels like 4. I never check my watch during movies, particularly not a Batman movie, and I check my watch at least twice during this film. It's better than Marvel, because everything's better than Marvel, because Marvel doesn't take characters seriously, and Marvel feels like cotton candy. This doesn't feel like cotton candy. It just feels like a fundamental betrayal of the character, which is just, it's lazy writing.
I mean, can you quantify the whole it's lazy writing? Because you can have a fundamental betrayal of the character that is by no means lazy writing still. That doesn't, those two things do not necessarily correlate.
And more than that, it's not nice to the audience. The audience wants to see Batman
It's not
be
nice to the
Batman and be
audience.
good at being Batman and know why he's being Batman. They don't want to see Batman learn the lesson that being Batman is bad.
No, oh my god, you don't get Batman.
That defeats the purpose of going to a Batman film. Alrighty, so that is my review of The Batman.
Enough. I'm done with this grossness.
So what do you guys think? If you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit that big, beautiful subscribe button. And of course, in the description below are links to different social media feeds, including the Patreon. If you're feeling extra generous like the following people, who are JK Strife, Marcus Ward, Cyrus the Skeptic, Biotinarts, Mr. SP, David 20 Covers, Sergio,
John Comey, Shodin,
George is Lost, Legendary Ray Ray, Cheesemaster769, Adam Myers, and Fayalan Schwarzenkraut. Thank you guys, you are the best of the best, but as for the rest of you, thank you so much for watching guys, and have a great day.